The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
In the Idaho Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, we have a right to life, we have a right to defend life.
This legislation is centered on meeting the needs of Idaho families.
And we have no way to maintain control over the spending of this program, and it will be a disaster for this state long term.
But we have a whole gamut of kids whose parents would like to do something for them and they cannot.
The courts have long held that our ability to transfer title on real property benefits society as a whole.
This is simply about putting it out of reach of young, innocent, vulnerable children and making our libraries and schools a safe place for them to go.
And I am increasingly frustrated that we cannot stop ourselves from drinking at the public trough.
He's sounding the alarm. He's saying if we don't address these issues, we potentially might have greater problems moving forward.
I feel like we're back to an unappointed board that gets to decide who is essential and who is non-essential.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
We're supposed to be bottom-up government. We're supposed to be representing my citizens' ideas and your citizens' ideas, and we're supposed to be discussing them and debating them to come to a conclusion.
And for me, it's about a couple things. It's about food security, it's about national security, and it's about preserving American exceptionalism.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
Okay, welcome everybody. March 4, 2024. My name is Matt Edwards and the signal is on the air. Happy Monday, everybody. It is March 4th, 2024, and in Idaho, that means it's Idaho Day. So happy Idaho Day to everybody out there. The Senate and the House started about a half hour early today in order to go through some Idaho Day celebrations. So they are busy getting ready to tackle some bills. I think that the Senate floor right now is debating House Bill 1252. This is known as the Defend the Guard Act. This bill seeks to ensure that the Idaho National Guard is only deployed if there is an actual declaration of war by the U.S. Congress. So that's the overarching broad scope of the bill, and they're debating it now. So we'll keep an eye on that as that moves along. Over in the House, they're finishing up some business there as they get ready to look over some bills. There are some interesting bills on the floor today that we're hoping that they get to, but we'll see if that happens. House Bill 494, which is deals with human trafficking, and then House Bill 538. That's the pronoun bill, the compelled speech bill. We'll be looking at that, but we expect that those bills will continue to be pushed because there's other legislation. This pronoun bill, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but this pronoun bill may be affected by other legislation. So they're trying to get that other legislation passed before they start debating this bill. That is the word on the street. So we'll update you on that. There's some other things going on, and we'll cut away to the House should that happen. Over the weekend was the GOP caucus, and so if you were a registered Republican and you found yourself going to your caucus location, here's some footage from up north. If you were also there, I'd like to welcome our new viewers, because if you picked up a copy of the Idaho Republic, which is a new newspaper, you'll see inside here, we had an ad. We had our own ad in the Idaho Republic. So if you are here because of that, welcome. If you're here on Rumble, YouTube, X, Telegram, Facebook, welcome to the program. It's so happy to have you here. And I'm especially glad that you're tuning in today because we have a very special guest, somebody who has been at the grassroots level on an issue that is very important to her and to her community. And so we are going to have her on here in just a minute, but I need to set it up for you, because what they have done here is what citizens need to do when you get involved at the grassroots level. And this show here is wants you folks out there to mobilize. And we're all about the signal here, no noise, right? So we are encouraging you to mobilize and take up an issue that is important to you. And we have someone on here who is headed to Boise this week to testify in response to a bill, some pending legislation. Now, we're going to have her on to tell you the story, but I need to tell you what this bill is. This is House Bill 506. And currently it's in the hands of Representative Jordan Redmond, a pledge signer in good standing here at CAI. And he presented this bill about a month ago, maybe more, in the House Business Committee. And since then, it's been sitting in the drawer, never expecting really to get a hearing. But our next guest put the pedal to the metal here and mobilized folks in order to make sure that this thing got a hearing. So, but what is this bill all about? It's about short-term rentals. And recently, a television station did a nice little package on this, and we want to play some of that for you because they did the work. So why not let them do this? So let's roll this news clip here, and we'll watch it for a little bit and see what the argument is all about.
Thanks for being with us each and every night here on the 630. And tonight's 360 coverage, a bill in the Idaho State Legislature targeting city governments that want to regulate short-term rentals. It is another chapter in the battle over how to best regulate these rentals, which include Airbnbs and VRBOs. Advocates for the bill saying it protects the rights of people who rent out these types of units. Opponents are concerned the bill undermines local control. Nonstop Local's Ava Wainhouse spoke with stakeholders on all sides of this issue to learn how it could impact communities in North Idaho.
We just want to put the best face of Coeur d'Alene forward, and we feel like what we've done here really does that.
Over the last 3 years, Melissa Radford and her husband have worked to give new life to this home that has stood on Government Way in Coeur d'Alene for over 100 years.
We put a lot of money into making this house beautiful and helping it stand for another 100 years.
The couple fell in love with North Idaho after moving here from Portland. But in the last few months, they've run into some local trouble in owning a short-term rental property, commonly known as Airbnbs.
This negativity that City Council has created, it just breaks my heart. Because we just want to welcome people.
City Council member Dan Gukin has spoken publicly multiple times on his concern over the growing short-term rental population in Coeur d'Alene. Right now, he says around 800 are licensed with the city.
Then they exploded, and that became a problem because they started to push into the neighborhoods.
Gukin says the people who live in STRs are not your neighbors. And for those who call Coeur d'Alene home, they want to have neighbors, consistent ones. He also says these properties tend to violate good neighborhood integrity.
And it's not that they cause a lot of problems, and we don't want to ban them. It's just that we want to keep them to a reasonable number. These are neighborhoods. These are residences. People buy into a neighborhood. They're investing into a neighborhood, not into a hotel. So our side is the other side for Mr. Redmond. We want to protect the neighbors. And neighbors have property rights too.
Idaho Representative Jordan Redmond recently introduced House Bill 506, designed to promote access to STRs and vacation rentals by limiting local governmental authority to prohibit the property uses or to specifically target them for regulation that other entities like long-term rentals would not face.
I'm not against healthy regulation. What I am against is trying to, force folks out of, what they want to do with their property.
We're trying to balance it. He's trying to pull the rug right out from under us.
Gukin says under Redmond's bill, city government would lose control over the rental properties.
And if Mr. Redmond's bill passes, the neighbors are going to complain to us, but there will be nothing we can do about it because he's basically saying that if you want to have a frat party every weekend in your vacation rental, there's nothing you can do about it. That will be your neighbor. And people in Coeur d'Alene don't want that.
Okay.
Winners and losers. And
all right.
We're
gonna let Representative Redmond during the hearing. We're going to watch his hearing this week, but we don't want to play the entire clip there. We want to make sure that we get to our guest. But before I do, the point here, this whole frat party thing is really hilarious, especially when you think it out in its logical conclusion. But I want to get into this story here. So. Well, let's just do this. Let's if Melissa's ready, let's have Melissa Radford on. She was seen in that news story. That was you, right, Melissa?
That was me.
That was you. Fantastic. All right. Well, welcome to the program. What I really want to focus on today is how you were able to mobilize and what happened with this bill, because we set it up. The bill was presented about a month ago. It's been sitting in committee for a long time, and I'm sure you guys were excited that this bill was presented, and then it just sort of lingered there. Bring us to that point where you decided you needed to do something?
I mean, we've been developing an association across, first of all, in Coeur d'Alene, when all this kind of started about a year and a half ago, we formed a Facebook group because we're like, this isn't right. We need to see if we're not the only ones that this is affecting. And so we formed the CDA Vacation Rental Alliance and had a Facebook group and got members, and we formed a 501c6, and we have a board and everything. We're very official. And so just to kind of start some outreach within our community, because we know how much positive we bring to our communities, in jobs, in supporting businesses, in welcoming families to our city. Not everybody wants to stay in a hotel, and that's great. We're just another option. So we started with that, and then the opportunity came up with Jordan Redmond last spring to kind of work on this bill that he had planned. And I was able to participate and kind of help him clean it up and make it so that it would really truly protect our property rights in the way that the Constitution says it needs to. Cities across Idaho have overstepped that line so far. And as we worked on this with him, I started reaching out and finding that this is happening across the state, and we're not even the worst in Coeur d'Alene. Places like McCall and Island Park and Bear Lake and several other communities in our state are struggling under this same overreach. I mean, it's abuse of power at its worst, and these cities think they're completely justified and they're not held accountable. And the law that currently is in place in the state of Idaho for short-term rentals acknowledges that we are beneficial use, that we are residential use, that we benefit the economy in huge ways. It protects our property rights, but there was enough kind of ambiguous language in there that cities have just driven this rough right through the Constitution. And so that's what this bill does.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. We'll get into it a little bit more here, but tell me about your experience in helping get this hearing happening. Cause the bill's going to be heard this week.
Yep.
And, what was your experience with that?
So we found out that the bill was being held by one person, the head of that committee, Representative Lance Clow. And we're like, okay, we need to figure out what we need to do this. So Jeremy and I went to Boise, Jeremy, my husband, and several other people from the Idaho Vacation Rental Association, our Facebook group that's across the state. And we went and just learned on the fly. Like, we became lobbyists by ourselves. We just started talking to whoever we could get an appointment with on the representative side, on the Senate side. And then when we realized it really and truly was on that Representative Clow had made a commitment to cities that he was not going to let this bill move forward. We didn't know that at the time. And so we went and found him in the cafeteria, and I was like, I know, Mr. Representative or Chairman Clow, that you don't like this bill, but we pray that you will listen to this and at least have a hearing, because we need to protect these rights. And I didn't think it would make a difference. We sent out a blast on our Facebook group and said, please, everybody send an email to Representative Clow today and beg him to bring it forward. And then the next day we met with the Speaker of the House and the President Pro Tem. We went and we were going to start moving. There's another process where you can take a bill to the Senate side if it's stuck in committee, and if the Senate committee will hear it, then they could move it forward. And so we were trying to work through that. I mean, we have no political experience, but we just had, we had the right people and God on our side, to really just have the ability to talk to people we never would have expected. And so we were kind of working through that process to get it on the Senate side. And then I think it was the next day, we found out that Lance Clow received more emails on this bill than he ever has in his career. And he decided to bring it out of the drawer and have a hearing. So, I mean, that was just a miracle and a win that we just never expected. So we have a hearing on Thursday and we're thrilled.
That's fantastic. See, that is the power of the people. That is the power of organizing, even if it's at this grassroots level here. And it really does show that when you are able to mobilize like this and get the attention of the chairman, go down there, get involved in the process, that you can have some power. Now, this doesn't mean that the bill becomes law. It just means we get to move it along the next logical step, or the next step in the process. Yeah. So that is fantastic. Okay, then let's get into this bill here, because this is fascinating, especially coming from, now I live where you live, so I'm very familiar with Councilman Dan Gukin and his and I'm going to say this, I won't let you say this, but I'm very intrigued at the thought that he has such an obsession with control, with local control. He doesn't like the state controlling the cities, but he wants the cities to control the individuals. And that is what we've seen time and again in Coeur d'Alene. I've seen it firsthand, especially during COVID. And so when it comes to the individual and individual property rights, is that really what it comes down to? Is individual property rights here for you?
100%. I mean, the way that they, city has portrayed this to our city, to our neighbors, is that we're a danger to the neighborhood integrity, that it's going to be parties all the time, that it's going to, that we're taking over neighborhoods. We are about 2% of the overall housing stock in Coeur d'Alene is short-term rentals. And even in the higher concentration area south of Harrison, it's only 5%. So we're not taking over neighborhoods. And the other, real big piece of data that I, shared early on, we got data from the CDA PD that we asked for how many noise and disturbance complaints did you get in the previous 2.5-year period? And then we did it again this year for the previous 1-year period. We cross-referenced that with the short-term rental permits, and it was less than 1% of complaints to the police department. And that's, so, I mean, they make it out to, it's scare tactics. And, we wanted to really share the truth. And that's the truth, is we benefit the town so much. We bring well-paying jobs to all kinds of people that work through, that like house cleaners and, furniture stores and, and also just the businesses that our guests frequent downtown. I mean, our town thrives because we have options, because we can have families here. And we don't want to be turning families away. The more they artificially restrict how many short-term rentals are available, the less the market can control pricing and volume and all those things. So, when there's fewer than the market can bear, you're going to end up with way higher prices because there's less competition. And so then people, on a budget won't be able to visit Coeur d'Alene. We need to let the market control this, not the government. All the things that they were considering as far as changing our bill were very arbitrary. And, things like lotteries and caps and distance, like you can't plan your future that way. And we know that the market will naturally keep us in a good level. But anyway.
Yeah. I mean, that's the principle of a free market, the demand, the supply, and then also the attractiveness of your business. So now tell me about this. Now, a lot of folks say, Airbnbs get trashed because of parties, and there's the garbage piles up and it's really messy and all that sort of thing. And I don't know, I've used Airbnbs before. Whenever I show up to a house, they're pretty clean. But what do you say to those detractors that say that Airbnbs just bring down the value of at least the aesthetic of the neighborhood that they're in?
Well, I'll tell you that how Airbnbs are the prettiest houses on the block. I can guarantee it, because we are star based. We want people coming to our house. So we want 5-star reviews. You're not going to get 5-star reviews if you have trash all over, or if you have a house that's been destroyed by partying. We we do not allow partying. Nobody allows partying in our town. Airbnb will kick you off the platform if you have, multiple parties. Like, it is not tolerated. It is also, we are trying to protect our property. We want them to be well taken care of and beautiful. We don't want people in our properties that are doing that. And also, we adore our neighbors. Like, we want our neighbors to be taken care of. Our house rules, I mean, it's like in bold at the top, like, we love our neighbors, take good care of them with us. And so, and that is what it is across our city. Those kinds of things that you're saying, those are, again, those scare tactics that they put out. They say, if you have a short-term rental next to you, you're going to hate it. It's going to be horrible. And then people don't experience that, but they're worried that they might. I mean, and in some places, so in McCall, for example, part of and this is part of why our law is so important too, one of their rules is you have to get a conditional use permit for larger houses. And a part of that permit process is you have to talk to all your neighbors. They have to agree to allow you to short-term rent. So your neighbor gets to decide what you can do with your property. Totally arbitrary. They've likely never had any issues. They're just afraid that if there's a short-term rental next to them, that's going to be a party house. And it's not true. So we need, our constitutional rights to be protected so that the scare tactics don't win. And so we can just be part of our communities and benefiting them. And if there is a problem property, that's the other great thing about this bill. It still allows them to get permits. This isn't taking power away from them to, require permits or have safety, rules and that kind of thing. It just creates that equality. It says that our guests and us are under all the same ordinances that everybody else is, as far as parking and noise and all those things. So it's equality. It's not, we don't get anything special. We don't get more than other people. It just protects our constitutional rights and creates equality for homeowners. And that's 100% right. So we are fighting really hard for this because that's what we believe in. And we really talking to the legislators when they get down to understanding how these cities have overreached and that property rights are why this is so important. So almost all of them are like, oh, I get it now. So it's been awesome.
Well, I'm sure. I hope you've been able to change some minds out there, because I know. I mean, there is a lot of opinion on these short-term rental things and what the impact of it that it has. And you shared a lot of information with us about this, and it's great to just know what the truth is and that you're fighting for your individual rights and your property rights and those of seemingly hundreds of people who have emailed Lance Clow to get this hearing on Thursday. So I wish you good luck down there in Boise on Thursday. We will definitely be keeping tabs on it. We'll probably watch you give testimony and update everybody here. So good luck to you. Where can people find you if they want to get involved with your alliance?
Thank you. So we have a Facebook page, the CDA Vacation Rental Alliance, that you should be able to find. And also for the statewide level, it's the Idaho Vacation Rental Association. So Fantastic. We do for CDA, we do have a website. It's CDAV as in vacation RA at .org. Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, you found it. That's it. Yeah. So,
great. Perfect. All right, Melissa. Well, thank you for joining us, and we'll check. Well, we lost her. No, there she is. Okay, we'll check back in with you again. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks. All right, everybody. Wow. Okay, that is the power of the grassroots. I'm telling you. Look at this. This. She got together with some colleagues, with some friends, mobilized across the state, sent in phone calls and emails, and said, "Hey, this bill is stuck in a drawer. It's very important. It's important to our communities." And you need to at least have a hearing on it. And they're having a hearing on Thursday. Fantastic. House Bill 506 and the House Business Committee Chairman Lance Clow and Representative Jordan Redmond will be there to present that bill. And it looks like Melissa and some of her friends will be down there testifying as well. That is the power that you have. Mobilize people. We've been telling you about bills that are stuck in drawers. We're going to tell you about some more of them today. We need those bills heard. They just need to get heard. These chairmen that think they have veto power. That's literally what they have, is veto power. They come across a bill and someone whispers in their ear or they don't like what happens with it. And they go, yeah, you know what? We're not going to hear it at all. That's more power than the governor. That's more power than the governor has. The governor could say, I don't like this bill. And then the bill could have an override by the legislature and come back. But a chairman, there's no override with the chairman. The chairman can throw a bill in the drawer and that's it. It's pretty powerful stuff. And so that's why it is important that you call, that you email all the time, all the time. Get to know these people. Get to know these people. This affects you. This affects you. And then one final note, it's fascinating. They went and interviewed Councilman Dan Gookin from the Coeur d'Alene City Council about this issue, and he's, like I said to Melissa, he seems to be very obsessed with local control of the individual in the states. I mean, in the cities, and yet he was the one that got to sit on the council during COVID and vote against mask mandates, knowing full well that the rest of the council would vote for mask mandates. So he got to play the Washington Senators to the Harlem Globetrotters, knowing that he's just there to lose all the time, and that way they always win. But if he was truly against mask mandates, if he truly was against mask mandates and despised it just like everybody else, then what was he doing endorsing his co-council person who was all for it, the greatest masker in the world? So the man has no principles. It's sad. All right. That's just some local drama. Apologies for that. But you got to pay attention all over, folks. We are going to take a quick break. The House and the Senate are passing bills, so we'll try and keep an update on what's going on there. And we will be back right after this.
There's a saying in Idaho, Esto perpetua. It is forever. But the truth is, nothing lasts forever. Not without a fight. The Gem State is ours to fight for. It is ours to win. For life and liberty, for honesty and integrity. We ride together.
Okay, we are back. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is a fantastic Idaho day. And while we were talking with Melissa, House Bill 597. House Bill 597 from Representative Jason Gallagher was passed in committee. I mean, on the floor. This would allow those who are over 18 yet still in school, in high school, to exempt themselves from the immunization requirements or disclosing immunization records. The medical privacy, basically. Right now, it protects students in class, but if you're over 18, you become an adult, and apparently there's a loophole there where you don't really fall under that. So this bill addresses that issue, and that's House Bill 597 that would allow 18 years and older to keep their medical privacy private if they want. Their immunization status is private if they so choose. So that's a good win there for medical privacy. Let's do we have to go over to the House? Are you showing the House? What are you about to show? Yeah, let's listen in on the House and see what's going on over there.
The mother of 5 children, the grandmother of 11 children, and a wonderful, wonderful wife, and I love her very much.
Welcome.
It sounds like they're doing introductions. So they'll do this throughout towards the end of the what do you call it? The end of the day. So they're probably going to be adjourning soon. It's almost the top of the hour. They're just doing some announcements. Heather Scott's doing some introductions and stuff too. So that's great. All right. Well, we are ready here to. We had some bills go through committee this morning, and it was interesting. We're trying to sort out exactly what's happening. We haven't seen the new drafts of some of these bills. There were bills that were presented a couple of weeks ago that we covered. They came back into committee and they were tabled, and then they were replaced with a new bill. So that happened with a couple of bills this morning. They were actually resolutions or. There was a House joint resolution and a House concurrent resolution that in the House State Affairs Committee, they were both swapped for something else. So we have a we'll keep tabs on that for you. Over in the Senate, let's check in on the Senate. It looks like they are debating the Defend the Guard Act. So let's listen in to Senator Tammy Nichols.
Follow and abide by our Constitution and what has been set out for us. Mr. President, I would like to read a quote by Merriam-Webster, if I could.
Is that the dictionary guy?
It is the dictionary guy.
I have permission to read from the dictionary.
Thank you, Mr. President. So Merriam-Webster, he was one of the finest statesmen of our nation. And in his career, he served as both a U.S. congressman, a senator, and the Secretary of State to 3 presidents. And this is what he said: "The operation of measures thus unconstitutional and illegal ought to be prevented by a resort to other measures which are both constitutional and legal. It will be the solemn duty of the state governments to protect their own authority over their own militia, and to interpose between their citizens and arbitrary power by the federal government. These are among the objects for which the state government exists." So for decades, the federal government has sought to use our National Guard as a tool to fight undeclared wars in violation of the federal law, and SB 1252 will hold the federal government accountable and end this unconstitutional practice. And with that, I will be voting in support of this bill. Thank you, Mr.
Is there further debate? Hearing none. Senator Adams, you're recognized to stand and close the debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did write down all the districts of all the folks who testified, and I appreciate all the testimony. This discussion needs to happen. It's healthy. I wanted to address a couple of the things that were brought up. First off, that somehow by the passage of this legislation, we would no longer be allowed to train. Title 32, which this legislation does not touch at all, is state orders training. Title 10 is active duty combat. Now, when you get called up, you might get Title 10 orders. That is, as the senator from District 8 brought up, the 1933 National Defense Act. That law was passed for uniformity. For uniformity. To make sure that the lieutenant in the Idaho National Guard is the same rank structure as over here and that everybody's getting trained. So when we do get called up through a declaration of war, that we all know what to call each other. We all know the pecking order. So I want to know what bureaucrat is saying that we're going to somehow be defunded. Something I really, when we're trying to fix a problem, you got to have a strategy. Hope is not a strategy. We have to take action. And this is action. You know, we fight federal bureaucracy on behalf of our citizens every day. We fight over water, we fight over land, we fight over grizzly bears and wolves. Surely we will fight over the very lives of our service members here in the National Guard and for our Constitution, which is clear. If you were to ask the average person, average citizen in Idaho, where American political power lies, most of them would say Congress or Washington, more accurately. But governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed, or so our Declaration of Independence says. We are the governed. And passing this legislation into law and through this chamber sends a clear message that we do not, on behalf of our citizens and the generations that will follow, consent to putting lives on the line until Congress first puts their political necks on the line. If it's worth dying for, it should be worth voting for. Nothing in this legislation limits our National Guard's ability to be called up through a declaration of war or for peacetime training. And if the courts want to challenge it or the DOD wants to challenge it, then let's have that discussion. But it only happens if we take the action. Thank you, Mr. President. Debate is closed.
The debate is closed. The question before the Senate is, shall Senate Bill 1252 pass the Senate? The Secretary will call the roll.
Adams. Anthon. Berndt.
60 seconds.
Senator Burns, you have 60 seconds to explain your vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. The emotion in this chamber is palpable. We can all feel it, and I echo the words from our good pro tem in District 20, who mentioned that his vote would not, was out of respect for those who have served and who are serving, who will serve in the Air National Guard in our great state. And I echo his words in his testimony as well. And with that, Mr. President, I will be voting aye. The Senator votes
Senator Berndt votes yes. Aye.
Bierke. Burtonshaw. Carlson. Cook. Den Hartog. Foreman. Grow. Guthrie. Harris. Hart. Hartkin. Herndon. Just. Lakey. Lee. Lenny. Lend. Nichols. Okonowitz. Robbie. Ricks. Ruckty. Schroeder. Semmelroth. Taylor. Taves. Trakel. Van Orden. Wardingle King. Winder. Wintrow. Seiderveld.
Senator Seiderfeld, you have 60 seconds to explain your vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to speak as a daughter, a granddaughter, an aunt, and a mother of veterans. My family has served in every single war I believe this country has seen. And it's difficult watching your loved ones go off, get on that bus, get on that ship, and getting a Zoom call, and then them, all of a sudden leaving their Connex building because they were getting bombed. It's difficult watching all of that as a loved one. I think that we should do everything we possibly can to make sure that we're sending them there constitutionally. They are giving their lives for us. There's no greater love than one who will give their life for another. I think that constitutionally, we should do everything that we can, that when we send them there, we are considering the cost and make sure we're doing it constitutionally. And to every single one of—
how do you vote?
I vote yes, and can I just say thank you for all your service?
You did. Senator Seiderfeld votes yes.
Anthon. Burtonshaw. Lakey. Lent. Robbie. Ruckty.
Mr. President, 60 seconds.
Senator Rutke, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I think the reason that we're all having, at least some of us, tough time with this vote is because it's actually the wrong debate. I think the real debate is what role we feel the United States should play around the world, and this just becomes a placeholder for that debate. Are we going to be isolationist, or are we going to be the defender of democracy that we have since World War II? It's not a coincidence that it was since World War II that we became a world power, and that the last time we declared war was in World War II. For that reason, I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Senator Rudke votes no.
Samaroff? Taylor?
The vote count shows 27 in favor with 8 against, a majority having voted in the affirmative. Senate Bill 1252 has passed the Senate. Hearing no correction to the title is approved, and the bill will be transmitted to the House.
Okay, there it is. Senator Ben Adams' Defend the Guard Act bill has passed the Senate, and it is on the way to the House side. So more debate will continue over there, and we'll be sure to follow that. All right, folks, we are going to take a quick break, and we will be back in a minute.
Surplus, which is not a surplus, it's an overcharging of the taxpayers.
All Idaho lawmakers swear an oath to support the Idaho and U.S. constitutions. But how's that working out for you? Because not all Idaho lawmakers share the same values. That's where the Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge comes in. 10 statements inspired by those 2 founding documents that are designed to preserve our shared values. Values such as education freedom, safeguarding free speech, defending our protected right to self-defense, and being responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. When a lawmaker signs the pledge, they are performing an act of political courage, accepting the challenge to be a champion for our values, and serving with political integrity. To find out if your lawmaker signed the pledge, visit idahopledge.com. Paid for by Citizens Alliance of Idaho. We ride together.
Okay, welcome back. It is March 4, Idaho Day here in Idaho, and we just watched the Senate pass the Defend the Guard Act, so that's headed over there. Earlier this morning, I was mentioning some bills being taken back and pushed forward and all that. Another interesting thing was the AI bill. This is House Bill 664. About using artificial intelligence to adjust people's images when it comes to campaigning during elections. And so that bill was before committee today. And if we get some time, we wanted to share a few clips from that later. But before then, we got to go back to the caucus that happened this weekend. So across Idaho, the caucus was held for the Republican Party. And we have been talking with Dorothy Moon, with others that have come onto the program about how we got into this situation. And just so everybody's clear, when the legislature adjourned for the year last year, we had nothing. Nobody was going to be able to vote in the Republican primary or the Democratic primary. There was no primary. It was done. Everybody was disenfranchised. With a stroke of a pen, Governor Little said nobody can vote for a presidential nominee after he signed that bill. He didn't have to sign it. He could have not signed it, and we would have had our traditional primaries in March. But he signed it, and then everybody was disenfranchised, whether you were a deployed military person, whether you were disabled, whether you were stuck under a tree, whatever it was, you were not able to vote at all, by mail, in person, early, whatever. It was not going to happen. Then the Idaho GOP, for them, stepped up and built out a caucus in order to save the day. And that day was on Saturday. With me today right now is Gem State Chronicle. Brian Allman joins the program live from the Capitol, I believe. He was in there watching the Defend the Guard Act vote. But he covered the caucus well. You have to read his write-up on the caucus that he released. But Brian, welcome to the program. Give us the rundown, sir. Give us your analysis of what happened this weekend with the caucus.
Hey, Matt. Good to see you again. I'll probably have a full, recap coming up soon. But obviously, this has been in the works for a while. It's been a year since the legislature got rid of the primary, and the party has been debating what to do. Finally, in October, they passed the deadline for the legislature to reconvene and fix it. So the caucus was a go. The RNC said, go for it. And they've been planning for 6 months. And for an event that was thrown together in 6 months, that was, I thought it went really well. I was a caucus captain in Eagle at a fairly small location. We had 5 precincts at an elementary school, and it went really well. We had probably 150 people, maybe 200, who were there right at noon. They were excited to be there. We did our opening ceremonies and then opened up the polls, and they went in, cast their ballots. Obviously, like all the other precincts, we went for Trump. But it was a really smooth event. There were no hiccups in our location. There were 341 people who checked in, and we counted 341 ballots on the other side. So,
amazing.
Nothing crazy happened. The tabulation was, out in the open. We had one of our state representatives and one of our city council members were in charge of counting, and we invited anyone who wanted to come watch, and several people did. They watched the counting process, and they double counted, counted each pile twice, made sure that all the numbers matched up. If they didn't, then they went back and redid it. And in the end, I think it was accurate. The only hiccup was a few people came late. They weren't sure when it ended, and so they thought that they could come later, but we were already done. But that's the way a caucus works. I was talking to someone the other day, and they pointed out that if you have a baseball game or a church service and there's a certain start time, that's you want to be there when it starts, because if you come 3 hours later, it might be done. And that's just educating people on the difference between a caucus and a primary election. But again, I thought it went really well. We didn't have any problems where I was, and I heard the same thing from a lot of other places. Yeah,
there was definitely I guess you could say, like you describe your caucus location as being about double what we had. We had about 74 people cast ballots at our location, my personal location. But there was places in Ada County that had like hundreds, if not thousands of people show up. Is that correct?
It's true. It just depends on what the locations were. In mine, it was an elementary school serving 5 precincts. Throughout Eagle, there were 2 others. But then down south of us in Meridian, they decided to put a whole bunch, I think it was the entirety of District 20 in one location, one very large location. And it sounds like they handled it perfectly. So it really did a good job of scaling. I think, credit has to go to Dorothy Moon and Brett Regan and Kara Turnbow, and all the other people in the state party and all the volunteers who helped them, because they had it prepared really well. They had us trained. They had us ready to handle any situation that might have come up. They sent out the postcards, the ballots. The ballots were really nice. They were embossed with a little gold seal, so easy to count, easy to read. And since they weren't counted by machine, it didn't matter how you filled in the circle, so long as the tabulators could tell what which one you marked. So they did a really great job in the 6 months of preparing for this event. And I think if they were to do it again, and I know if I was to do it again, we would take what we learned and make it even better.
Yeah. And what was interesting, and some people might be shocked by looking at some of the footage that we were just playing of these like plastic containers from from Costco or Walmart or something, like oh my goodness, like our sacred ballots are being held in these. I mean, it's sacred. It's like everybody treats these ballots as if it's like the Ark of the Covenant, but in reality, we're voting. It's pieces of paper. They go in a bucket. They need to be counted. All we're doing is a simple. It's basically a poll. It's like, hey, what does everybody think? If you're all here, what do we all think? And it doesn't take much sophistication to ask people to write down their choices on a piece of paper and then count them at the end. It was such a stark contrast to where we've come along now, where we have computers and we're doing all the counting at a central location, and we have to re-verify and upload and do a Starlink with this and get the results over here, and we're tabulating as we're going along, 20% in, 30% in, 40% in. And I mean, it's like, no, just count at the precinct level. Look at these folks. They're just sitting there counting, and they double. That's the one I went to. And they're just sitting there double counting, I mean, that was it. Where is there a happy medium here? Because I understand, when you have a ballot that has 50 different issues on it, it might take a lot longer to go through all those things. But is there a happy medium here between what we did with one race and what we could do on a larger level when we do have multiple issues on the ballot?
I'm pretty comfortable with the way that Ada County does it. It's a paper ballot and you fill in the circles, but then it's tabulated by a machine. And there's all sorts of controls for making sure that the number of ballots and the number of check-ins are all equal. And the chief judge takes it back to the office, and they'll keep the ballots. They don't destroy them so that they can do audits and make sure it's good. Because that really is at the higher scale. At this scale, though, the ballot and the ballot box, it doesn't need to be super sophisticated. You don't need a gold-plated box to put your ballots in. We used a tub from Walmart with a hole cut in the middle and zip ties to close it up, seal it. And before we started, I held it up and showed everybody, look, it is empty. And in front of everybody, we sealed it up. And then people who were still there at the end watched us cut it open. So I think it's not necessarily sophistication you need, it's transparency. It's people need the opportunity to see the count and be there to make sure that everything is above board. Because if you're doing everything above board, then there's no reason to hide. You don't need a team of lawyers to be in there and watch and make sure, they're actually counting the ballots as they should, and there's no shenanigans going on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that you nailed it right there. The transparency is key, and this was. Again, for as small of a race as that it was, it really came down to two people, even though some other folks got some votes that have pulled out of the race.
Yeah, we had one voter for Ryan Binkley at our location.
Very, very good. I think we had two for DeSantis at my location. But it really just comes down to transparency. And so, all right. Well, we look forward to your full. I know you put out some preliminary observations on your website, but we'll look forward to a full wrap up and addressing some of the issues that people brought up. Look, I mean, your analogy between the caucus and like a baseball game is like the time. It starts at 11, so show up at 11. Or for us, it started for noon for you.
Right.
But that was the start time, so show up. And I get it, some people are not paying attention all the time and all that, but you know what? That's on you. I mean, there are plenty. I mean, I saw a lot of people show up, so apparently they got the memo. So if you're not getting the memo, there's plenty of places to sign up to get the memo. One of them is the Gem State Chronicle. The other is to tune into Idaho Signal. The other is to sign up if you're a hardcore Republican, sign up at the Idaho GOP for their newsletter. Like, pay attention. I'm sorry. I just like I have some sympathy, but I also you need to give a little too. And so that's my call out to everybody else who felt like they got the shaft yesterday by showing up at 5 minutes before 8:00 when the polls normally close. Where is everybody?
Yeah, I wrote on my every Sunday I do a little devotional piece on the Chronicle, and I wrote about how maybe life is too convenient nowadays. We expect to be able to vote from the comfort of our home and just drop the ballot in the mailbox. But some things I think are worth getting up and doing, and taking part in the political process is one of those things. The caucus was an event. You come and you meet your neighbors, you watch the videos, or in some places I think they did have representatives of the campaign speaking on behalf of the candidates. It's a community event. It's not just something you do, on your way out to work. So all 500,000 registered Republicans were invited to come to the caucus, and if they chose not to come, that's up to them. So the future is going to belong to show up, and to those who show up. And I was so glad to see the people who did make the effort to show up on Saturday.
Well put, my friend. The future belongs to those who show up. That's your next T-shirt. I don't know if that's your quote. Okay, good.
I don't know where it came from, but I repeat it a lot.
All right. Well, you own it, brother. All right, Brian, give us where everybody can follow you to make sure they keep in touch with you.
Go to gemstatechronicle.com. You can subscribe at gemstate.substack.com. And if you follow me at gemstatebrian on Twitter or X, you'll see kind of ongoing commentary. I was live tweeting the Defend the Guard debate up there from the gallery, and I'll continue to post things that are happening here at the Capitol as it goes on.
Fantastic. Always great to have you here. Very valuable. And the guy's puts his nose to the grindstone out there, folks. So once again, if you're just tuning in for the first time because you saw our ad in the Idaho Republic at the caucus, you need to follow Brian Allman as well. So thanks again, Brian, for coming in. We'll have you back.
Thanks.
All right, folks. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
There's a saying in Idaho, Esto perpetua. It is forever. But the truth is, nothing lasts forever. Not without a fight. The Gem State is ours to fight for. It is ours to win. For life and liberty. For honesty and integrity. We ride together.
All right, folks, welcome back. We had a lot happening this morning that we still have to try and sift through. So I'm not gonna stumble my way through all this stuff. We're gonna figure it out. We'll have it for you later this week as we keep tabs on what's going on in the House and the Senate down there. But I just want to kind of wrap up what you saw today. For those who joined late or didn't see the top of the show with Melissa Radford and her ability to mobilize in her community and then realize that there were other interested parties across the state in this short-term rental, this Airbnb, VRBO type business, and for tourism in these spots that they felt that they were going to have the cities come down hard on them and stop them from being able to offer this as an option for people who are traveling to these different areas for vacation purposes. And so she mobilized and she got this bill out of the House Business Committee, out of the drawer, to have a hearing. This bill was only introduced over a month ago. I think it was February 8th. So maybe it was a little less than a month ago, but it was around that time. By the time it's heard, it will have been a month probably since this bill was heard, first introduced. And so she was able to help mobilize phone calls, emails, contacting other folks to do the same. And go. She went down to the Capitol. She was telling us the story. She went down to the Capitol and spoke to Representative Klaus, went over to the Senate side and said, what can we do over on the Senate side? So this is an active government. And it belongs, Brian Hallman said it before we went to the break. I totally forgot the line, so he needs a t-shirt so I can put it on the back. But it's absolutely true. You show up and you get to be involved, and that's all it takes. 80% of the success is you got to show up. History is for those that show up. So we knew we have it there. Great. Perfect. Keep that in mind, folks. That is what this show is all about. There are bills that are stuck in committee, and you can get them out. You can drag them out and hold them up and say, let's have a public hearing. We will have a list of those bills in future shows this week because we are paying attention to some of those. One of those is... a lot of these are important. I'm not going to single out one right now. Okay, well, I thank you so much for joining us today. IdahoSignal.com is where you can support us, so head over there. You can support us financially. You can give us words of encouragement. You can find all of our links so you can share, follow, hit the subscribe bell. I know there's a lot of people that go, oh, you got to smash the like button and hit the alert button, and you could do all those things if you want. The most important thing that you can do is remember, push out the noise. Focus on the signal. Make sure you are moving forward and showing up. That is key, and that is what we aim to do here. So please do that. If you want to find out who is a pledge signer with the Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge, who's in good standing, you go to standings.citizensallianceidaho.org, or you just go to citizensalliance.org and look there and make sure that you know who shares your values, where they are when it comes to voting on these principles in the legislature. There it is there. Fantastic. All right, folks. Thank you so much again for joining us. We will see you tomorrow for another show. Oh my goodness. We have a huge announcement about Wednesday. So follow our social media channels. We're going to make a huge announcement on our social media channels about this coming Wednesday. So stay tuned for that. You're not going to want to miss it, especially if you're in the north. All right, folks, we'll see you next time.
This bill, I think, it puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.